suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, 13 minutes to the top of 9 a.m. This will be a very brief or a very short broadcast because, like I told you guys last night, if we had some small time to do it in the morning, we'll do it in the morning, but not for long, and because I have a morning engagement. However, whatever it is that we may have not discussed during the course of this broadcast, then we will get to revisit in the evening later on. But I wanted to start on the note of, we're going to be speaking about Lamine Yamal's situation with Barcelona and the Spanish national team, because this is a question that was posed to me last night in our broadcast. For those of you that were part of that, in case you aren't part of it, we did go on for about an hour and 12 minutes or thereabout. So please, very, very great conversation we had in that podcast. So please endeavor to go back to the channel under the video section. You will find that broadcast from yesterday evening with the headline of Uganda Cups beat France to qualify for round of 32, and then Thomas Tuchel wants more playing time for Lewis Kelly at Arsenal. So those are the situations we did discuss, but the conversation was much, much broader than that. In as far as the context of football is concerned, and then this is more of a continuation of that in a sense of the international break and what the international duty means for some of these teams, for some of the players that are involved in it, and things like that. Because usually, and I've said this before, it's a bit of a catch-22. Sometimes players do not want to go away for these international breaks. Oftentimes, their managers do not want them to go away for these international breaks because of the injury implications. Because oftentimes, sometimes some of these managers have this sort of, I don't want to call it, but their preference about the international break would be that their players would use those 2 weeks perhaps to take a breather, to take a break, to have a bit of a rest, especially knowing how games come in a bit of a marathon, particularly for the big teams that are involved within the UEFA Champions League, that are involved within the domestic leagues. For example, if you're Real Madrid, you're playing in the Spanish La Liga, you're playing in the UEFA Champions League, you're playing in the Copa del Rey. Same applies if you're in the UK. If you're a team like Man City, you're playing Premier League football, you're playing Champions League football, you're playing FA Cup football or the Carabao Cup, and then subsequently you're also playing the FA Cup later on. Apologies. I think I need to, but my brightness is okay. I think my lighting is the issue. Nicholas Noah says, hello Nicholas, good morning to you all. Hi everyone, for those of you that are just joining the broadcast, my name is Robert Kesakos and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. Please do me the absolute honor and like the broadcast, but also if you're new here, please do not hesitate to subscribe to the Football Tribe UG community. It's a football community, that's what we do, talk about football. So in the context of players and injuries, it's not very strange and it's not very new to hear that, let's say, a club would want to hold on to a player during the international break, that a club would rather their player not go away for the international break. In some cases, there have been allegations of clubs or players faking injuries prior to the international break, so that to be excused from the responsibilities of having to go away with their respective national teams. We've heard of these things before, and like I said, first of all, sometimes the international break may feel as timely interventions, but oftentimes do not feel that way, Oftentimes they do not feel that way. China Mega says, hello China, good morning, how are you doing, where are you guys joining us from? Please let me know where you're joining us down in the comment section so that I can give you a shout out. But thank you so much, Team India, for the love and support. Malaysia, Indonesia, Spain, UK, and every single one of you from your respective countries where you're joining us from this beautiful morning once again. So In this particular case, the topic is about Lamine Yamal. Why? Because Lamine Yamal has had to be withdrawn from the Spanish national team squad that was preparing for their double, fixtures of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Georgia and Turkey. Now, we know for a fact that Spain is one of the elite teams of Europe. In fact, the reigning champions of the Euro 2024, having beaten up against England in the final by 2-1. So, going into the World Cup, they're going to be one of the teams that we discuss most. And it's not the first time that Spain or the Spanish Federation and Barcelona have sort of found themselves in a bit of a spat about the same player. And this the decision was made after the player apparently underwent invasive radio frequency treatment. This is according to reports, which refers to a treatment for a nagging groin. Now, we know that Lamine Yamal has been out of action for Barcelona for some games this season due to injury. And I think I do not want to say it's the same, but I could relate it to what Cole Palmer has had to go through at Chelsea. Those sort of injuries. And for Cole Palmer, he's been out for a bit of a longer spell. So Lamine Yamal himself had just returned and he played in their game against a Club Rouge, in which they shared the spoils in a 3-3 draw. That was in the UEFA Champions League. I think he scored in that game, by the way. Including Fermin Lopez combined with Ferran Torres for Ferran Torres to score in that game. Now, over the weekend, Barcelona beat up against Celta Vigo by 4-2, and Lamine Yamal was one of the goal scorers, with Robert Lewandowski scoring a hat-trick in that game as Barcelona won the game to sort of close the gap at the summit of the Spanish La Liga with Real Madrid, who had drawn against Rayo Vallecano. Now, because he played in that game and then he undergoes this treatment, I think that's the point of contention. That's where the point of contention is coming from. That you had the player play over the weekend, and then suddenly you're telling us to be cautious with him or not to play him, during the international break. Vamos, Baka. Vamos, Baka. I would want to believe that you're a Barcelona fan when you call yourself Vamos. I think Vamos, does that mean come on, Barcelona? So, we are talking about Barcelona. So, we know that previously the manager, that's Hansi Flick, has expressed concerns over Spain's overutilization of Lamine Yamal, or playing him too many minutes in the World Cup qualifying, games. And so when the player was already feeling discomfort. So here's what happens with players, and this I've come to learn over the years, is that just because you see a player on the pitch does not necessarily mean that that player is injury-free. It does not necessarily mean that that player is fully fit. It's not always the case. Sometimes players play through painkillers. We've heard of the injection. They gave him an injection to play. Players continuously play through injuries. In some cases, they're minor injuries. In some cases, they're discomforts. In other cases, they play with serious injuries that they carry on for a period of time. That feeling of it's bad, but it's not yet worse kind of situation. For example, last season, particularly at Arsenal, Jurriën Timber played through an ankle injury for a good number of games, until when Arsenal eventually got knocked out of the UEFA Champions League at the hands of PSG, who beat them home and away by 1-0 at the Emirates Stadium, and in the reverse fixture by 2-1. That then Arsenal decided to sanction his, surgery, going into the summer break or the season break, hoping that he would use that period during the season off period for him to recover and be back in time for their preseason tour. And for those of you that care to remember, during the preseason tour, Jurriën Timber hardly featured because he was still on his road to recovery from that very surgery. So he had played through injury. Ben White underwent surgery, underwent knee surgery. I think particularly, was it last season, because he had been playing through injury for quite some time. He's one of those players that was putting in the shift. Shekub, is it Shekub? Shekub says Katia Bueno. Shakub says hi. Hi, Shakub. Why are you joining us from this beautiful morning? It's a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. But I hope you're doing okay and all right. So thank you so much, guys, for the love and support. Please leave me a like on the broadcast. But also, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm begging you. Thank you so much. So in the wake of that sort of understanding that players play through injury, so it's not very strange for, let's say, for Barcelona to claim that the player is having an ongoing issue or he's had to undergo this kind of therapy to help with an ongoing issue. Depending on the severity of the issue, the team doctors may advise the team managers against playing the player or may choose to permit the player to play under certain conditions or precautions, So, for example, they could say he will be good for maybe 50 minutes or maybe 1 hour, but beyond that, please withdraw him. Or they could say he's not there yet, but he could play under, let's say, a painkiller, in that sort of situation. And then the player gets put on the pitch. So, in this case, we're trying to answer that question that was raised to us in yesterday's podcast regarding Lamine Yamal's situation with the Spanish national team. So, like I've told you, the decision was made after he underwent an invasive radio frequency treatment for a nagging groin injury at his club, that is Barcelona. Now, which requires a period of 7 to 10 days of rest. Guess how long the international break is? It's for 10 days. Practically, those players are away for a period of 10 days and then they return. Majority of them start returning on Wednesdays for example, Wednesday, the subsequent week. And they start returning, and then Thursday, some players have to travel very, very long distances, especially players that are from South America and things like that, and some parts of Asia. So for some players, it's short distances. For example, if you're playing within Europe and let's say you need to leave the UK to go to Spain, if you need to leave Spain to go to Germany, to go to Italy, around that sort of zone, and Norway within Europe, oftentimes the distances are much shorter as compared to others, even for some African players who return for international duty, the distances tend to be shorter in some cases. So, for example, if you're, let's say, you're an African player playing in Portugal, and you're coming back to represent your country, like Morocco, like Algeria or Egypt, that's a bit of a short distance, and then they can also be very, very long. For example, if you're an African player playing in the Major League Soccer, we've had a couple of own Ugandan players who play there that have been summoned to international duty, and it's a long distance for them, of course. I think no less than 14 hours of travel. So in that sort of context, so in this particular case, Barcelona saying, given the invasive radio frequency treatment that he had that went for a nagging groin, he needs the 7 to 8 to 10 days of rest. Now, because national team federations know that clubs sometimes fake injuries for players to try and omit them or have them forfeited for the international duty, what some teams resort to, or some nationalities, or some countries, or some federations resort to, is going ahead to summon those players and have them assessed by their own team doctors, by their own medical departments, to say, okay, they said you're injured, but we think you're good to go. They said you're injured, but we think you're good to go and you play, They said you're injured and I think the injury is there. We just do not want to risk it. Let's not play you. And whereas I understand where Spain are coming from on this one, I also understand for Barcelona, where Barcelona are coming from. And I'm not saying that Barcelona being completely honest or that they are being saints in this particular case. All I'm saying is that it could be that even though he played in the weekend, he played through a minor issue, or he was playing through some level of discomfort, but he still played anyway, And at the back of their minds, they were thinking, let's play him. What's the worst that could happen? Let's play him. He will play only this one game, and then he will have this whole break to, rest and recuperate as until we return. Because remember, this is the final international break for this year, 2025. The next time we will have an international break will have to be March 2026. So that means we're going to have football for a period of course close on to 4 months uninterrupted in as far as league football is concerned. Now, please bear in mind that in some leagues, we have what we call winter breaks. For example, the Spanish La Liga, I think the Italian Serie A is one of those that normally have the winter breaks. I think the German Bundesliga also have a similar thing. It's usually the Premier League where that was not a thing. It's only been for 2 seasons where they've tried to introduce that sort of bit of a winter break where they give some teams a 2 weeks break. So, and during those 2 weeks break, some teams go to train in the warm weather. Arsenal have been known for going over to Dubai. So, this being the last international break, and after the international break, we know that for most leagues, it's a marathon of fixtures. Why? Because they want to get to the halfway line of the season by the time it is January, or by the time they break off for their winter breaks. So, example in point, you look at the Premier League where they played 11 games. That means they still have 8 games to play until the midway point of the season. And guess what? All those games have to be played in the next 6 weeks. That's the period between, is it November 22nd? Should be. I need to cross-check on my calendar. Yes, between November 22nd and the 31st of December period, around that ballpark, So that's why you're having a fixture congestion. In any case, need I remind you that some fixtures have had to be rearranged, particularly concerning Arsenal and Crystal Palace, because they have a quarter-final between them in the EFL Cup. So that in itself is a factor, So many clubs would rather use this international break of November to give their players a bit of a rest, because then it is going to be a marathon of fixtures going for them. Because that marathon of fixtures is not just within their domestic leagues. The UEFA Champions League, arrangements also continue, and in between there, like I've said, you also have the cup competition games. So they need to manage that. Now, also the other thing is, but now on the side of the Spanish Federation, I think for them, they feel that Barcelona are toying with him, and their reaction from the federation was surprised and concerned because they were reportedly notified of the procedure before it took place on Monday, and the same day the national team camp was scheduled to begin. So, in other words, Barcelona gave notice about the procedure on the player on the same day the players were expected to report in camp for their training for the two fixtures against Georgia and Turkey in the World Cup qualifiers. Now, the historical context to this whole debate about Lamine Yamal, the Spanish Federation, and Barcelona is that this incident is the latest in an ongoing point of contention between, like I said, in September, Barcelona's coach had previously criticized the Spanish Federation, for them overplaying Lamine Yamal in that sort of case. Now, they overplay him. Why? Because he's a good player. He's an impact player. He's a player that delivers. He's not just out there, adding bodies on the pitch. He's actually, creating actual impact, and that's why they play him many minutes. It's easy for us to sometimes forget that Lamine Yamal is only 18 years of age. Sometimes, but also the other thing I would want to think. Spain not need to communicate to us that they have an over-reliance on Lamine Yamal. I think they have a team that is capable of winning games even without Lamine Yamal. Now, of course, every team would want to have their best players available. And for Spain, I do not think anybody comes better than Lamine Yamal in the short recent past, So I completely understand that. But let's make this assumption. What if we go into the World Cup and he has a bad injury and he cannot play in the World Cup? That whole 1 month period between June and July, and he cannot play. then what? What does that mean for Spain? Does that mean it's the end of the road for them? Does that mean that they cannot then compete just because they are without Lamine Yamal? I certainly do not want to believe so. I wouldn't want to think so. That one player, as crucial as they could be what costs Spain. Their reputation at such an important tournament that only comes once every 4 years. I do not want to believe that. So they, as the Spanish Federation, who should be able to find solutions for that, alternative players, to say that in the absence of Lamine Yamal, these are going to be our go-to impact players. And yesterday we were talking about Mikel Merino, because somebody was saying, can he be the World Cup top scorer when we go into the World Cup in 2026? Now, and I was saying, obviously he can, because why not? He's shown that he's capable of scoring the goals every time he's been played up front there. So Luis de la Fuente, who guided Spain into the triumph of the European Championship in 2024, having taken over the reins from Luis Enrique back in December 2022, should be able to find solutions within his squad in terms of who plays in the absence of Lamine Yamal. So, and I do not think Spain are short of talent when it comes to that. His natural replacements to the right wing may not come quickly off my fingertips, but I know that they do have those players. We look at a player like Nico Williams, scored a brilliant goal during over the weekend in their 1-0 victory. I do not particularly remember against who, but he's one of those players that can rise to the occasion. Again, we remember his brilliance in the Euro 2024. He was that good. And never mind that he went on to have a not so great season in the 2024-2025 campaign, but overall he's a very, very good player, So you have a good composition of players. If I understand Rodri, one of their mainstays in that team, has been out through injury. Of course, they've had to rely on Martin Zubimendi in that midfield, but they do have the talent. They do have a Mikel Oyarzabal up front, among the players that you can rely on for impact, for impact in as far as that team is concerned, because, excuse me, I believe they are well equipped across all departments, So let's see whether Luis de la Fuente will be able to find those solutions within that squad for Lamine Yamal. But yeah, because I believe they do have the players. That's Fabian Ruiz, in that midfield. You have Fermin Lopez, you have Pedri in midfield, you have, I do not know if Gavi made it to the squad because he had been out through injury. Alvaro Morata, you cannot really count much on him. You have Yeremy Pino from Crystal Palace, you have Ferran Torres, Dani Olmo, Fermin Lopez. They do have the players in and around that team that are capable of creating the kind of impact that they would have loved to have. Anyways, guys, I can see we're 22 of us on the broadcast, but it's only 5 likes. Guys, please like the broadcast. But also, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. And on that note, therefore, I want to say thank you so much to all our new subscribers, those that have recently joined the community. Thank you so much for the continued love and support. So please go ahead and click that subscribe button and help us continue to grow on this journey. So anyways, I think that's in it for the debate on Lamine Yamal. It's 11 minutes past 9 a.m. Like I told you guys, this was bound to be a very, very short, engagement. But we will be here to engage. We intend to go through to have a review of our own predictions in as far as the Premier League is concerned. Are we changing minds from season review? We're doing a repeat and reassessing them. Teams doing what we expected them to to be doing after 11 games. Like I said, I'm looking forward to do an interview, possibly tomorrow if all goes well, with one of the top brains in as far as football is concerned, and among other things. So just keep it locked on the channel, and do not miss out on any single thing. Like I said, go over to the channel under the video section and watch all that content. The other day we did put out a video saying why Manchester City will be Arsenal's biggest title rivals this season. I gave you all my justifications as why I think that will be the case. So please go ahead and watch that content. Like I said, we are trying to build 4,000 hours of watch time in a space of 1 year, so that we can get the channel monetized to help us, improve on our delivery of this information. Otherwise, allow me wish you a wonderful rest of the day, a blessed day, and I'll see you guys in the evening / at night at 11 p.m. East African time for another discussion on football. What the topic will be, just keep it locked on the channel and you'll find out. Bye-bye for now. Stay blessed.